Welcome to the Deep Dives. So this week, our focus within the Balkan narrative is on, well, a really significant piece of modern history. We're talking about the Dayton Accord. We want to kind of unpack its role in ending a terrible war, but also look at the tricky reality it set up afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dayton Peace Agreement, it was signed back in December 95, over in Dayton, Ohio, actually. Came after some really intense talks. Richard Holbrooke played a big part. And its main achievement, it stopped that horrific war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 3.5 years it lasted. And the source material, it doesn't mince words about how bad it was. You know, ethnic cleansing, mass graves, civilians targeted. Serbia and Croatia, their stated aims were basically to carve up the new state, get rid of the Muslims. So Dayton stopped that. But here's the paradox, right? It brought peace, yes, but it did so by sort of cementing the very ethnic divisions that fueled the war in the first place. It created this government structure built on those lines.
That's quite a paradox.
Yeah.
Ending the violence, but maybe locking in the problem. So how did they, justify that? How does the source explain accepting this structure that seems, flawed from the outset?
Well, the immediate thing, the absolute priority was stopping the killing, stopping the ethnic cleansing. That was undeniable. Yeah. And all the main groups, the Muslims, Serbs, Croats, they all saw the need for that, even if nobody got exactly what they wanted. But yeah, to get that peace, the agreement basically had to accept the power these ethno-nationalist groups already held. The source is pretty clear, there's no such thing as a perfect agreement in these situations, but accepting that power led to a very rigid, often inflexible political system, especially weak at the central level.
Right. And you mentioned structure. It sounds incredibly complicated. The source traces it back even before Dayton 95 to something in 94.
Exactly. The Washington Agreement in March 94, that ended the fighting between Croats and Muslims and set up what's called the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. That was sort of layer one. Dayton then built on that. It defines these three main ethnic groups, Muslims, Serbs, Croats, as constituent peoples. And that term, constituent peoples, it's not just a label, it's a legal status that basically dictates everything politically. It prioritizes ethnic identity over, say, a shared civic identity.
Okay.
So the whole government system is based on proportional representation for these groups. Quotas, reserved seats, power sharing at every single level. And then administratively, Dayton splits the country into three parts. The Federation you mentioned, Republika Srpska, and this special area, the Brčko district. But the key thing is how decentralized it is. 80% of state power went down to the lower levels, mainly to the Federation and Republika Srpska. And within the Federation, power even goes down further to 10 cantons.
Wow, okay. So if I'm hearing this right, the central government, the one for the whole country, ends up weaker than these entities underneath it. The Federation and Republika Srpska have bigger budgets, more real power than the Central Council of Ministers.
That's exactly how the source describes it, a fragmented political structure.
And the source calls the result, what was it? A large, bulky, expensive bureaucracy and an inefficient government. Doesn't sound great.
No, it certainly highlights the inefficiency. And then there's another whole layer to this, external oversight. Dayton set up both military and civilian oversight bodies. The U.S. handles the military side, essentially, but the EU appoints a high representative for the civilian part. And this figure, they actually have what the source calls super legal powers. They can impose laws, fire officials.
Super legal powers, impose laws.
Yes, which is why the source uses this really strong term. It calls Bosnia and Herzegovina a country under a Western capitulation system.
A capitulation system. That sounds intense. What does that actually mean on the ground?
Well, it implies significant external control. Think back historically to capitulations where a country gave up certain rights to foreign powers. Here, it means external actors, the EU, the US, keep a really strong hand in key areas. Foreign policy has to align with the West. Economic decisions are heavily influenced by the World Bank. There's even a US-created banking agency. Social issues, too, like LGBTQ+ rights. There's external pressure. Even military sales, Bosnian factories need approval from a commission with a US rep. It's pervasive.
Right. So this external control, the source seems to argue it might actually be hindering Bosnia from becoming a truly independent state. It keeps things stable, maybe, but stops genuine state building, and maybe even allows Serbia and Croatia to keep meddling.
That's precisely the argument presented, that this whole setup, while maybe necessary for stability initially, delays real progress. It creates weaknesses. The source even notes that the existence of Republika Srpska itself was effectively imposed on the Bosnian president before the Dayton talks formally concluded. Which raises a kind of counterfactual question. What if Republika Srpska had been dissolved? Would all this ongoing U.S. intervention have been needed? The source kind of suggests the U.S., even with its power, couldn't fully resolve it alone and had to accept the reality of Serb power, essentially a de facto partition. So Dayton's legacy is really twofold, isn't it? It was absolutely vital for peace, accepted by all sides as the minimum needed to stop the war. That's huge. But on the other hand, it created this complex, inefficient system, weak central government, strong ethno-nationalist divisions kind of baked in, a costly peace, as the source puts it. And with all this complexity, this external oversight still in place, it really makes you wonder, what is the long-term future for Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Yeah, exactly. So what does this all mean for you listening? This deep dive really shows how sometimes achieving peace, ending violence, can bring its own set of really deep structural problems. Here's something provocative to think about, drawn from the source. It notes that while most ordinary people in Bosnia and Herzegovina actually live together peacefully, day to day, in a multi-ethnic way, it's often their own ethno-nationalist political leaders who keep tensions simmering, arguably for their own political gain. So the question is, in a system like Dayton's, what does it actually take for broader national interest to finally win out over those narrower ethnic ones? What needs to change?